Listen, I'm worried about Paul Pogba. His prime has been littered of injuries, and here he is injured again, and this injury is not a good one. So I'm going to explain to you my concerns over this injury, talk about his prime, or what would have been his prime, and then we can look to the future. In return, you guys, if you like the video, hit the subscribe button. Lego. Right, listen to this from Juventus themselves. Following complaining of pain in his right knee, Paul Pogba underwent radiological examinations that revealed a lesion of the lateral meniscus. So Paul Pogba has a torn right lateral meniscus within his knee. Not a great injury at all. Relatively common in footballers, occurs normally during a twisted mechanism while performing physical activity and can have long-term consequences. The menisci are basically structures that live within your knee, and they are extremely important, not only in the stability of the knee joint, how well all the bones come together in the knee, but mostly how load is transferred through the body, through the knee, okay? They're basically massive shock absorbers that also stabilize the knee. So without them, your knee is in big trouble, okay? We have two in each knee, one that's medial and one that's lateral on the outside. And Paul Pogba was injured his lateral meniscus. The reason why that is significant is because the lateral meniscus injury has more long-term complications than the medial meniscus, okay? The lateral meniscus has more responsibility, basically, in providing stability to the knee during rotation and dynamic movement, and also the forces that it takes through the knee from the upper body, from your femur, down through your leg. So it's a really important structure. So with me having stressed the importance of a lateral meniscus, without it or with an insufficient one, what actually happens? Well, as we said, the knee is less stable, but also in terms of force, in terms of the shock absorbing, you lose that shock absorbing and your knee can degenerate on that lateral side really quickly. And I mean really quickly. In a few years, the cartilage underneath can crumble. You can have a lot of swelling, clicking, locking, pain in that knee, and a lot of problems. It's a type of injury that Phil Jones had actually, and that has really hampered his career, but it's very common in footballers and long-term big issues. An orthopedic surgeon actually once said to me, losing the lateral meniscus or part of the lateral meniscus is the beginning of the end for the knee. So it's an interesting injury. What I will say though, to be fair, not all lateral meniscus injuries are created equal. That lateral meniscus can tear in many different ways, up, down, left, right, big, small. It can be flapping about, it can be stable, and all that plays into how we treat this injury. So how do we treat it? Okay, the 4 R's, okay, that's how I would approach this. So number one would be remove the lateral meniscus. No one really does that anymore. That is knee suicide. It'd have to be something really drastic to consider actually removing the lateral meniscus. The next thing you can do is consider repairing the lateral meniscus, okay? Remember, the goal here is to retain as much lateral meniscus as possible. So if we can repair it, that's potentially a really good outcome. What I would say about that is that it's only suitable for certain types of tears of the lateral meniscus, and the rehab from that is a lot longer. So that's probably 6 months out, 4 to 6 months out, and then risk of it tearing again anyway. So it's the type of thing we probably would reserve for younger players and players who've got more time on their hands to rehabilitate. There's an option therefore to resect. So a meniscectomy, cut out a part of the meniscus that's torn or that's injured, okay? And by doing that, you kind of remove the injured bit, you build up slowly, let the rest of it compensate, build your strength up, and you can go back. And you might be back with a lateral meniscus, I don't know, maybe say 10 weeks, 12 weeks. But as we said, if you lose some of that meniscus, you put yourself in a bad position going forward in the long term of the knee, which leaves the 4th option, rehab. Now, have a listen to this. Paul Pogba has decided not to undergo surgery on his knee in the hope he can feature for France at this winter's World Cup. According to Gazzetta dello Sport, the 2018 World Cup winner's 5-week conservative treatment will first involve 3 in the gym and then 2 weeks on the pitch. So Pogba's gone for a rehab. He's gone for rehab of this injury. What I think is that this is what is great about sports medicine. Really, you've got to think about the short term, the medium term, the long term, what's going on in the season with the team, with the player, what the player wants. There's a lot of factors that go into it. Ultimately, he's got a World Cup coming up. He wants to be back relatively soonish, get some games under his belt, make sure he's feeling good, ready for selection for the World Cup. France are one of the favourites. He's got a chance in his career to win another World Cup. It's truly an incredible opportunity. And with opportunity, sometimes you have to take risks. For me personally, I like this decision in that it gives us a chance to retain and reserve the meniscus, which for the long term for his knee will be better for this player. What I didn't like, and again, this is just my opinion, was the 5-week return to play protocol. That seems a little bit short. The issue of rehabbing these tears is that sometimes they can be unpredictable. Obviously, if it's not repaired and if the tear's there, there's a chance that as you increase activity, the tear can get bigger. He can still have pain, stiffness, swelling, which can affect his performance, and he might end up under the knife anyway. So you lose a certain element of predictability that you'd get if you just did a meniscectomy and put him on a standard return to training protocol. So you lose that kind of predictability, even though nothing really is truly predictable. And I would think for a lateral meniscus, particularly how risky that injury is, I would presume that the return to play would be longer. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if that return to play goes from 5 weeks to 8 weeks to 10 weeks, just to make sure they're doing the safe thing. But they know, they've seen the tear. It might be a tiny tear, minimally affecting him. If so, as I said, they come in many, many shapes and sizes. He's gone for the rehab option. We'll have to see how that turns out. And hopefully he doesn't have to go under the knife. Yeah, and this is the second bit I wanted to talk about, really. His prime. His prime is so-called prime, which has actually been littered by injuries, and it's concerning me a little bit. Over the last 3 seasons, he's missed 71 games. His availability, which really we'd want over 90% ideally, so availability to playing games, he's been 58% over the last 3 years, so not great. And what I also don't like is that he's had this kind of a nice little mixture of different injuries, a mixture of different tissues. Had bone injuries, had muscle injuries. He missed 40 games of an ankle injury. I think he said himself it was a bone injury. He missed 24 games of a hamstring injury. He's missed another 5 of a calf injury. So a mixture of muscle, mixture of bone. And now he's got this meniscus injury. And it's all the type of thing that makes you wonder, is this going to become a recurring thing? When are we going to see him back to him? Because you've got to bear in mind, right? Not only do you need to come back, return to play is one thing, but return to performance. So if he's only been available to play 58% of the games, what percentage of those has he really been fully fit, really ready to go in his flow, that swaggy Paul Pogba we know? Probably maybe less than 50%. Don't know what's going to happen. I think he's made the right decision long term for the knee, for the time being. And who knows, listen, he might just be back in December, tearing up the World Cup, lifting the World Cup trophy again, crack on, win the Scudetto with Juventus, and all of this is a much of a muchness. We will have to see. Right lateral meniscal tear, really interesting injury, interesting treatment. Hope you enjoyed it. See you soon.